Reactive training systems.
So I got a question recently about RPE training and whether or not RPE training contradicts the principle of overload. And of course, I tend to be an advocate for RPE training. So my position is that it doesn't make a contradiction. And I think that I can understand why you might think that, but thinking that comes from most of the time misunderstanding what the principle of overload is all about. So the overload principle is basically saying that you need to increase the stimulus as adaptation happens. So a training stimulus of 1 is going to yield an adaptation for a while, and then it won't. Then you'll have to apply a training stimulus of 2 to get continued adaptations, and 3, and so on. Now, what that makes people think is that they need to continually add more weight to the bar or continually do more and more volume in order to drive progress. And that's true in principle. The problem comes in the application. That does not mean that you need to manually force this process to happen. It happens on its own. And in the sense of RPE training, you really don't need to worry about it that much because it's a programming question at that point. You know, at that point, if I have you do a triple at a 9 RPE, then if adaptation has happened and you've adapted to a higher training stimulus, then it's going to take a little bit more weight to get to that 9 RPE. So triple at 9 RPE becomes the stimulus that is sought by the athlete to begin with. Then there's the other question of volume, and so we're getting into something maybe a little bit different here and a little bit more difficult territory, but I tend to think that you don't need to reach toward forcing more volume into your program as often as a lot of people think. I definitely don't push volume increases every week. I definitely don't push them even really training cycle to training cycle. I allow those adaptations to happen. I think some people get in a hurry and they're really pushing for more training stimulus when they haven't fully adapted to the training stimulus that they've got already. I think a bit of a more patient approach can lead to fewer injuries, less athlete burnout, better long-term progress. And you see that with powerlifters who've been doing this for a long time. A lot of powerlifters continue to get stronger for a long time doing basically the same program. Now, of course, that's not to say that everybody can do that, but I think it's a advocacy for a more patient approach. If you need to increase the training workload, the volume essentially, to get a higher training stimulus, then of course, by all means, do that. But you have to strike a balance with that. You have to strike a balance with always pushing, driving for more progress and allowing adaptation to happen. So the overload principle is great, but it leads you down a wrong path unless you also pair it with fatigue management. And fatigue management, not in the sense that, oh, I'm tired today, but that you're managing fatigue across basically all time domains. Are you tired today? Have you been more tired this week, on average than normal? What about this month or this whole training cycle? Those things need to be considered and they have to be weighted appropriately. So it's not as simple as just push for more workload all the time. I think that takes you down a bad road. It's a tool. It's there when you need it. Push for more workload when it's appropriate to push for more workload, but don't have that be a short-term, always present in the program, continually ratcheting up the intensity of the stimulus thing. I think a more patient approach, understanding that you're not driving progress as much as you're coaxing progress. I think that that's maybe a better mentality to take.
Reactive training systems.